Now, the one thing that you really need to do is take proper care of the exterior paint, whether it's on your motorcycle, your boat, your airplane, your RV, your car, whatever. You need to take really good care of it. And there's several products out there called waxes, sealants, protectants. What's the difference? Who can you trust with what product? And how do you know that your product is not going to damage the surface paint? Well, a sealant is something that will remove oxidation, scratches, swirl marks, and things like that. That's what my Advantage is. Bottles in the store will say for heavy oxidation remover, heavy duty cleaner. That's considered a sealant, and that's what renews it is. A wax is always made with carnauba. Now, I'll have people all the time come down and say, Mary, or call me and say, Mary, I need to buy a bottle of your wax. I know they're talking about Advantage. Advantage is not a wax because it does not contain petroleum distillates, okay? A wax does not contain carnauba. It's not petroleum. It doesn't contain petroleum distillates either, but it doesn't contain carnauba wax. Wax is what contains carnauba wax. The reason that I don't use carnauba wax is because it will actually penetrate a clear coat, a gel coat. It gets down to fiberglass and seals fiberglass. Now, it's safe to use on a metal surface, but fiberglass is very porous. So if you go in and seal it, that porous surface is going to start turning yellow. And you don't want that happening. You don't want a white car or a white, motor home or a white boat turning yellow on you. So you shouldn't be using carnauba wax on it. My Advantage is what they call a protectant. It contains polymers in it. And polymers, the neat part about it, make a surface slick. So carnauba wax penetrates. So when you rub a cloth across a vehicle that's been treated with carnauba wax, it just kind of drags. So if you take Advantage and treat Advantage, put Advantage on the side of a vehicle, your hand will just slide right across it, and so will a cloth. Now, the great part about that is dirt doesn't stick, bugs don't stick to your windshields, dirt doesn't stick to the sides, the bugs will wipe right off of the front, and it makes cleaning your vehicle a whole lot easier. Now, the polymers do give you UV ray protection, so it will protect you against oxidation and damage by the sun. And it also, I had Advantage formulated to where it does not contain petroleum distillates. And what distillates do, when we talked about that a little bit earlier, when the paints changed from being a lead-based paint over to being like a chroma-based paint or a polyurethane-based paint, it meant that the paints were not as hard anymore. And petroleum distillates can damage the paint and cause it to oxidize. So I had it formulated without petroleum distillates. And the neat part about that is if you have decals on your car or on your motorhome, the distillates will get in. The distillates is what you find in WD-40 that will dissolve stickers on glass and things like that. Well, the distillates will dissolve the adhesive on the back of your decals and striping. Or if you have a company vehicle that has decals on it, it'll dissolve that adhesive and cause it to pull away from the surface. So Advantage does not have that on there. Now, a little bit of word of warning. If you run across a product and the company says, well, we don't tell you what's in our product, it's proprietary information, the first thing you want to do is put your wallet back in your pocket and get out of Dodge. You have a right. It's expensive to have to repaint a car, repaint anything, whether it's a car, an RV, a motorhome, a motorcycle. It's expensive to repaint them. You have a right to know what is being put on your vehicle. And the reason that I'm telling you that is because a lot of these people do not want to tell you that their product contains silicone. okay? What happens with silicone is, okay, say like if you get your vehicle scratched and it needs to be repainted, silicone does not come completely off of a vehicle of any kind. You can't get 100% of it off. Paint doesn't stick to it. How many of you have ever painted your home and tried to paint over the caulking around your windows on the outside? The paint didn't stick, right? Paint won't stick to silicone. If you can't get it completely off of a vehicle, that means that paint is not going to stick. 3 or 4 months later, it's going to start bubbling and peeling. And that's why these companies don't want to tell you what's in their product. So be very careful with that. If you don't know what's in a product, go look for something else. Okay, so how often do you wax? Well, if your car, your vehicle is outdoors full-time, you need to be applying that 2 to 3 times a year at least. And I always advise people when they start using My Advantage to apply it the first year, at least 2 to 3 times the first year. After that, you'll start building up these protective coatings. And then after that, maybe once every 8 or 9 months is all that you're going to need to use it, because it's going to stay nice and protected for you. So if you're using something other than My Advantage, probably 2 to 3 times a year if your vehicle is parked outdoors. If you're parked indoors 6 months out of the year, probably once to twice a year is all that you're going to need. Definitely treat it before or after you come back from vacation, to keep it looking nice and good. But you'll know when it's time to replace and to redo your wax or your protectant. And that's because of the fact that the dirt's going to start sticking. It's going to be harder to get bugs off the windshield and bugs off the front and things like that. And also, by the way, with Advantage having polymers in it, spray this on a cloth, wipe it on your rear view mirrors. It's really difficult to get the bugs off of the rear view mirrors, so spray a little Advantage on there. Now, one last thing that I want to tell you, if you have an RV or a motorhome, I have a little book out called Whistle While You Work, and it was really funny. I had a gentleman, the name of my booklet came from a gentleman many years ago, called me and he said, "Mary, I need to buy a set of your cleaning tools for my coach." And I said, "Great." But as we were talking, he was kind of laughing and giggling. And I said, "Well, what's so funny?" And he said, "Well, nobody else will ever admit this, but he said, when you have a motorhome or an RV, everybody always sets up in the park, and then we all start walking around the park to find out what everybody else is using." And he said, "I walked past this one spot and this guy was whistling." And he said, "I looked over and he was using these products that I had not seen before." And he said, "I walked over," and he said, "I already had a garage full of stuff that either broke, didn't work, I got disgusted with it." And he said, so I walked over and asked the guy if I could help him clean his coach. He said, "Sure." And he said, well, when we got done, he looked at the guy and he said, "Well, these tools are great." He said, "They're the best I've ever used, but it didn't explain why you were whistling." And the guy looked at him and he says, "'Cause it worked." And he said, "What do you mean it worked?" And he says, "Every time I whistle, I get help cleaning my coach." So learn to whistle, you'll get help cleaning your coach, you'll make a lot of friends that way. Pick up a copy of my my Whistle While You Work, and also pick up a copy of my Complete Idiot's Guide to Green Cleaning. Thank you for coming into the seminar. If you have any questions, you're welcome to either call me or stop over at my booth or email me from my website. I'm here to help.